The chamber was white, smooth and cold. Flames rolled behind the transparent wall, burning hotter than jet thrusters. Metal warped, melted, ran down the walls like blood from a vein. A figure stood in the middle of it all, skin already blistering, lips pulled back in a defiant snarl. "This is your representative?" one Zalvari scientist asked, voice clicking through its translator with surgical calm. Type F designation. Soft tissue. No secondary exoskeleton. Pain-reactive nervous system. "Yes," replied Earth Liaison Meridanen. She didn't blink. "That's Devin Rain." The Zalvari leaned closer to the display, unimpressed. "He will last 90 seconds. This trial is ceremonial." "Then record it," she said. The glass dome had no ventilation. The atmosphere was artificial, engineered to replicate the volcanic vents of the Zalvari homeworld. Sulfur, extreme heat, plasma jets. Devin Rain stepped into it barefoot, half naked. Scars already covered his body. Old ones, deep ones. His eyes, pale blue, didn't blink as the door seal behind him. A warning blared. The dome's temperature began to rise. The internal AI announced the beginning of the flame trial. He took one breath and whispered, "To your worst." The fire came fast. It hit from all angles: liquid flame, vapor heat, synthetic accelerants. Within seconds, the skin on his forearm split. His feet sizzled on the floor. The pain was instant and overwhelming, but he didn't scream. Outside, the Zalvari logged it. Pain response, delayed. Initial nerve degradation visible. "Is he medicated?" one asked. "No," Mara said. "He refused all enhancers." "Then this is spectacle." "No," she said. "This is history." Inside the dome, Rain kept moving. Small steps, but steady. Every motion peeled flesh from muscle. His hands trembled. Blood boiled on his lips, but he grinned. He remembered a different fire. Earth's terraform riots. He'd been 22, trapped in a refinery with 40 civilians when the synthetic oxygen lines ruptured. The firestorm that followed killed everyone. Everyone except him. He crawled through 20 meters of flame with his face half gone and a child on his back. He lived. The child did not. That was the last time he screamed. The Zalvari called it primitive. Their records showed that no sentient species had ever survived the flame trial unaided. None had even walked more than 5 steps. The previous record was 11 seconds. Rain passed 15. The pain should have shut him down. But he didn't rely on nerves. He didn't rely on strength. He didn't rely on logic. He relied on hate. Outside, an aide whispered he's burning alive. Mara didn't answer. Inside, Devin Rain took another step. His heel stuck to the floor. Torn away. He limped. His breathing came in hard, ragged gasps. Half his face had blistered away. His hair, gone. His chest charred a muscle. He kept walking. They turned the heat up. Plasma vents fired. He staggered but didn't fall. He pressed his hand to the burning glass wall, fingers smoking. The aliens watched in absolute silence. No tech, no shield, no genetic enhancement. Just raw, bloody defiance. A scientist checked the vitals again. This should be lethal. Mara finally spoke. "You measure biology. You should have measured will." Inside, Rain coughed blood and laughed. The Zalvari analysts began transmitting the data to their war archive. A new tag appeared beside Rain's name. Anomaly. They pulled his psychological file. Human military records. High pain tolerance. Post-traumatic conditioning. Extreme survivor bias. Survivor of 8 shipwrecks. Refused synthetic grafts. Once held a perimeter for 9 hours after third-degree burns to 40% of his body. He walked with pain the way others walk with oxygen. They called humans fragile. But none of their simulations had prepared for deliberate endurance. Rain made it 20 steps. 21. His knees gave out. He fell hard, shoulder cracking against the floor. His face hit the metal. A layer of skin stuck when he pushed himself up. Still no scream. Only breath. Slow. Focused. His eyes locked on the pedestal across the dome. A raised platform, ringed in flame. The trial's finish point. He crawled now, hand over hand. Each motion pulled strips of him loose. Outside, one of the younger Zalvari asked, "What drives this?" "No reward. No survival guarantee." "What is the function?" Mara said nothing. Inside, Rain collapsed again. A voice echoed in his mind. His daughter's. Long gone. A memory. "Don't quit, Daddy. Ever." He pushed himself upright with one hand. The other was gone. Burnt to the elbow. He didn't look down. He reached the platform. One final step. The fire roared in defiance. He roared back. The system marked time. 3 minutes, 47 seconds. The dome powered down. Silence. Smoke settled over the chamber. A charred shape remained standing, barely recognizable as human. Still upright. Still breathing. A gasp swept through the observation room. Not from Earth. From the aliens. Mara stood. "Congratulations," she said to no one. "You've met a human." The trial ended, but the fear had only begun. He couldn't hear anymore. The roar of fire had dissolved into a high-pitched ring inside his skull. Every breath Devin Rain took felt like inhaling razors. His lungs hissed through torn muscle and cooked blood. Skin peeled in wet ribbons from his arms as he dropped to one knee. Internal temperature, 700 degrees Celsius. Duration, for minutes. No living organism should be moving at this point. Devin Rain rose again. The Zalvari observers whispered, some without realizing they were doing it. Others simply stared, waiting for the anomaly to end. It didn't. He dragged himself forward, one hand missing, ribs visible, eyes sealed shut with ash and blistered skin. Each step was slow, not measured, not strategic, pure instinct. Determination forged in trauma and defiance. The Zalvari recorders began pulsing red. Internal notes logged phrases not seen before. Subject exceeding pain limits. Subject exhibiting irrational endurance. Subject will not die. In a hive link, one tactical observer suggested the human was being remote controlled. Impossible, another replied. His pain response is conscious, voluntary. Then why? No answer came. Inside the dome, rain fell again. He hit the floor like a corpse. Silence followed. One Zalvari marked the trial complete. The system flagged him as clinically dead. Then he moved, a twitch in his fingers, a groan so deep it sounded like machinery tearing apart. He rolled over, pushed himself up with one elbow, lips split and bleeding. He laughed. It sounded like gravel and broken glass. Not joy, not madness, mockery, as if to say, "That's it? That's all you got?" He stood barely. Bones showed through one leg. His right foot was ruined. He leaned forward, staggering toward the center of the inferno. The pedestal stood untouched, still engulfed. The final point of the flame trial. No one had ever reached it. He limped toward it, unblinking, unspeaking. Each step left a piece of him behind. But still he moved. The Zalvari High Observer disconnected from the central analysis feed. "This isn't possible," he said aloud. An elder beside him replied, "You study their cells. You do not study their soul." Inside the dome, Rain's pace slowed. His body shook. Finally, he fell again, this time at the base of the pedestal. No movement. Silence returned. One observer sighed. "It is finished." Then he began to crawl. The room recoiled. He used the remains of his limbs to pull himself through the fire. His arms shredded on the metal floor. The stump of his leg dragged behind, smoking, but his head lifted, face forward, mouth open, inhaling fire like air. He reached the pedestal. His hand, half bone, touched the edge. The fire should have vaporized him. Instead, he pulled himself up. One final push. He stood atop the pedestal, wobbling like a scarecrow in a furnace, and raised what was left of his hand to the observation window. The flame reflected in his sockets, no longer eyes, but hollow, seared orbs. The trial AI flickered. Subject has completed the flame trial. Duration, 6 minutes, 12 seconds. No celebration, no honor guard, just silence. Absolute, devastating silence. The observer said nothing, not out of respect, out of fear, because he was still standing. The observers debated behind sealed psychic channels. The consensus began to fragment. This breaks the right. This violates expectation. This is not a warrior. This is infection. A lower caste watcher finally asked what none dared say aloud. Why doesn't he fall? The answer came not from data, but from a whisper in the hive link. Because falling isn't part of the human ritual. The pedestal cracked beneath him. Rain collapsed. He didn't crash. He sank, body folding in on itself, limbs failing, breathing slowing, but his chest still moved. Barely. Soft. Steady. Alive. That word, alive, set off a ripple through the Rahari systems. Some claimed equipment failure. Others called it fraud. One simply stared at the screen and said, "We've misunderstood the definition of fragile." In the outer systems, the data spread. Clips of Rain's trial leaked into the independent networks. The footage was unwatchable to most species. Too visceral. Too real. Some who tried to watch fainted. Others tore off their haptic links midstream. But humans? Humans watched it on loop. They didn't turn away. They played it in bars, in bunkers, in training camps. And every time he stood, they stood with him. Inside the medical bay, hours later, his vitals registered low but stable. Skin grafts couldn't hold. Organ support was failing. But he was conscious. Eyes burned shut. Voice mangled. A nurse leaned over. "You should have died." He wheezed something. She leaned closer. "I don't walk away from fire," he whispered. "I walk through it." Then he passed out again. In the Zalvari Council archives, his name was reclassified. Not Type F, not anomaly, but something new. Rain class. Definition: subject displays lethal tolerance. Will not break under flame, trauma, or logic. Approach with caution. Engage only if necessary. The flame trial was never held again. The official record of the flame trial was sealed within 12 hours. Redacted. Buried beneath encryption layers known only to the Zalvari High Thought caste. But the damage was already done. They couldn't contain what they didn't understand. Rain had survived fire that should have turned him to ash. Not because his body was superior, but because it wasn't. That was the part they feared. He wasn't beyond pain, he wore it. The internal consensus collapsed faster than any drone breach. Half of the Zalvari scientific caste began doubting their physiological indexes. The other half started writing entirely new ones, but every formula came back empty, where one word now lingered. Human. In a sealed deliberation chamber, 17 high-function, thinkers gathered to dissect the footage again. Rain, skin peeling, muscles exposed, dragging his ruined form toward the core. No speech, no bargaining, no plea, only movement. His flesh failed, one of them said. But his will did not, said another. The trial was designed to eliminate all forward action after 2 minutes. Then redefine forward action. Redefine human. On screen, Rain raised his mangled arm toward the observation window again. The image froze. They stared. That gesture shattered something deeper than protocol. It mocked their understanding of surrender. A being half dead had looked them in the eye and reached toward them, not in desperation but in defiance. Zalvari minds were breaking quietly in private, not with screams or violence, but with questions. That was more dangerous. Elsewhere, in one of the outer system colonies, a young Zalvari maintenance technician desynced from the hive link for the first time in its life. Not under command. Voluntarily. It had watched the trial alone. Unfiltered. Unshielded. Its first words afterward were, "I don't want to be like us." Across the hive clusters, unauthorized copies of the flame trial began to circulate, spreading like a virus among the young. Whispers grew louder. If humans are fragile, why didn't he fall? Inside Earth's classified medical facility orbiting Luna Minor, Devin Rain was kept under chemical suspension, neural healing, bone reconstruction. But every few hours he'd wake, not from nightmares, into them. Each time, he'd mutter something through broken teeth. "I'm still walking." Doctor said he should have died 16 times. His lungs were cooked. His eyes had liquefied. His nerves were permanently scarred past functional range. But the brain scans told a different story. Zero trauma. No post-pain shutdown. He remembered everything. That made them more nervous than the burns. Human High Command reviewed the flame trial in silence. The final moments played 3 times. No one spoke until Admiral Kellen said, "That was fire. So what happens when they test something worse?" General Savik replied, "Then we send someone who's walked through worse." Humanity changed its doctrine overnight. No longer reactive. No longer diplomatic first. Now, show them what hurts. Show them who doesn't stop. Back among the Zalvari, dissension became open. One caste leader committed memory severance, an act reserved for those too corrupted to continue logical function. His final entry read, "I saw the human in fire, and I saw myself powerless, watching." Their war mind had no protocol for psychological infection, no firewall for defiance as ideology. They tried denying the trial, tried calling it faked, but even their own soldiers didn't believe it. A growing portion of military units requested relocation away from human borders, not because of weapons, because of stories. Stories of Rain waking up screaming with a smile. Stories of a species that viewed pain not as a limit, but as a door. Another trial was proposed, a new test, harsher, no fire, vacuum torture, neural pressure, total sensory erasure. But it was rejected, not by the elders, by the rank and file. No one wanted to watch a human endure that. 2. One commander stated it clearly. They'll survive it, and they'll remember everything. In the alien academic districts, where lectures once explained that humans were unremarkable flesh forms with emotional liabilities, new studies were introduced. Resilience-based biopsychology, the human paradox. Students debated out loud. How can a fragile creature become a myth? The answer eventually settled like ash in their throats. Because fragility requires courage, and courage doesn't burn. Meanwhile, on Earth, Rain recovered enough to sit up. His voice returned in fragments. His first request wasn't for treatment. It was for a copy of the footage. He watched it alone, every second, without flinching. When the final frame froze on him standing in flames, his burned lips cracked into something between a grin and a grimace. He whispered, "I could have gone farther." When they told him the trial had been archived, erased from public record, his only reply was, "They'll never forget it." And they didn't. The Zalvari began using new slang across fleet reports, rain distance, meaning the range beyond expected endurance. They assigned new color alerts for human encounters, red for armed, black for unarmed, because Rain hadn't carried a weapon. He was the weapon, a single biological organism that withstood a death environment built to reduce heroes to slag. In time, the flame trial wasn't just a scandal. It became a lesson, and not for the humans, for everyone else. Devin Rain stepped onto the Earth's surface 6 weeks after dying. Officially, he still wasn't alive. Medically, he was a miracle. Politically, he was a problem. But culturally, galactically, he was something far more dangerous. He was legend. The Zalvari tried to pretend it never happened. Files were locked, names erased, analysts reassigned. But truth doesn't vanish. It spreads, slowly, quietly, like fire under oxygen. Somewhere on a mining moon, a young soldier painted a symbol onto their armor, a human silhouette engulfed in flame, hand raised, face blank. No one told them to. No one had to. The image became known as the Ashwalker. In a black site orbiting Vihari space, alien commanders ran emotional stress simulations on new recruits. The simulation always ended the same way, a projection of Rain stepping through a burning corridor. No weapon, no words, just walking. Of the 500 test subjects exposed, 137 broke protocol. 6 quit the military outright. The term Rain event was added to the Interspecies Warfare Codex. Definition: uncontrollable psychological degradation upon encountering human acts of irrational endurance. On Earth, Rain stood without aid for the first time. He didn't ask for press, didn't want medals. His skin was grafted, his voice gravel. His heart rate still spiked when he smelled smoke. But when asked what he felt, he gave one word: ready, not recovered. Ready. They put him in front of a camera once. Just once. Internal footage only. A debrief for human command. He stared through the lens, face scarred and half-shadowed. There was no ceremony, no speech, just one sentence, spoken slow and clear. You thought fire would break us. You didn't realize we come from it. After that, they didn't put him in front of a camera again. They didn't need to. Rain's face became a phantom on enemy ships. Unauthorized graffiti in military halls. Drawn in chalk. Burned into metal. Hacked into feeds. On the edge of neutral space, a Zalvari ambassador attempted to reinstate diplomatic contact. The human diplomat simply said, "Have you completed your trials?" and walked out. That silence did more than any laser barrage. Because every Zalvari knew what trials meant now. It meant a man standing in 2,000-degree flame with nothing but a heartbeat and a reason. The flame trial was never spoken of publicly again. But within the Zalvari War archives, it remained under one tag: cultural emergency. Its subdesignation? Human fragility fallacy. On Earth, new combat doctrine was born from that one event. Not armor, not upgrades, endurance tactics. Boot camp instructors changed phrasing. Pain is weakness leaving the body became pain is the price of presence. Recruits didn't ask how to avoid suffering. They trained for how to keep moving through it. Ghost Protocol operatives began citing Rain's trial and mission planning. Whenever an objective was deemed impossible, someone always said, "Rain walked through worse." That ended the argument. Elsewhere, a Zalvari defector uploaded a file to the Blacknet, the full flame trial. Uncut, raw, it went viral in 12 systems. Aliens from species who had never known physical pain watched in mute horror. Some wept, others shut it off. But humans? Humans watched it with fists clenched and eyes forward. They didn't cheer. They nodded, because they understood. Rain had never screamed, not once, through all 6 minutes of agony. That silence said more than any anthem. Years later, when the first treaty between humans and the Vrahari was signed, the only condition Earth submitted was simple: no more trials. Ever. The Vrahari agreed without negotiation. At the end of his service, Rain retired to an off-world colony. No parades. No honors. He didn't want them. He lived in a house made of carbon steel in silence. Visitors weren't allowed to ask about the trial. But one child did. A kid from a third-gen mining family. Born under twin suns. Watched the flame trial when he wasn't supposed to. The boy looked up at the scarred man sitting on the edge of the cliff and asked, "Did it hurt?" Rain didn't look at him. He just nodded. "Yeah, every second." "Why didn't you stop?" Rain took a long breath. His voice was the sound of stone breaking. "Because they needed to see that we don't stop." The boy said nothing. But that night, he carved a figure into the wall of his room. A man on fire, still walking. In time, the galaxy forgot the names of generals. They forgot ship classes, battle reports, even treaties. But they didn't forget the fire. And they never forgot the man who walked through it, because he proved the greatest truth the stars had ever heard. Humans aren't strong because they're unbreakable. They're strong because they break and keep going. And when the galaxy burns, it won't be the strongest species who endure. It'll be the ones who already learned how to walk through fire.